Welcome to Straight Guy Queer Eye. I'm your host, Paul Yen. This is episode 15. We always start off with an important ethics statement. I want to acknowledge that being straight gives me privileges that the queer community does not get. I know that I will never fully understand the trauma, the drama, and all the other homophobic garbage that queer people deal with every single day. I'm not an expert in queer culture. I'm also not a therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a doctor. As host of the Straight Guy Queer Eye podcast, I'm just here to introduce people to shows that impact me and that I love. More importantly, I'm here to listen and to learn about the queer community, and I hope to pass that knowledge on to like-minded people who want to make a difference in the queer community, their own community, and especially in their own lives. If you listened last week, you'll know that I was sick. Unfortunately, this stubborn-ass cold won't completely go away, so if you hear any nasaliness, now you know why. Also, there's some construction going on outside my place, so if you hear some clicking and clanking, you also know why. So, 6 queens remain. Sahara Davenport went home last week in her loss to Jujubee. Sahara's parting lipstick message was, live, love, and believe. It reads like one of those phrases that people put up on their walls in their homes. Immediately after the queens read Sahara's message, they're having a chat about what they experienced as young gay men. Tyra Sanchez says that in high school, people threw paper at her and referred to her as that gay boy James. Jessica Wilde said in her home country of Puerto Rico, people would yell, pato, 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 which was slang for gay, or derogatory slang for gay, I'm guessing. Jujubee, who's Laotian, said that her uncle would call her katoy, katoy. That's maybe a really terrible pronunciation of that, but that's what it sounded like she said to me. She said she was out in high school because there was no way to hide that she was gay. Pandora shared that she wanted to kill herself. For years, she didn't understand what gay was. She said she went through depression and took pills to try to kill herself. During this conversation, Ru enters the workroom to introduce the mini challenge. And I am really excited to let you all know that this is the introduction to what RuPaul calls the library, where reading is fundamental. A reminder that reading someone is reading someone like a book, throwing shade, critiquing them, bagging on them, dissing them, talking shit. It's a tribute to the documentary Paris is Burning. Basically, each queen takes a turn reading the other queens in a playful way, and the funniest queen wins. When it's their turn, they're given a pair of fun or flamboyant sunglasses for the shade, and they go down the line reading whoever they want. And because it's the first time, I'll go through what each queen says. Whenever a queen is about to read, Ru says, "The library is open," and when a queen is done, Ru says, "The library is now closed." First up is Tyra. She says she doesn't really want to do this. Ru says it's because she's Christian, but Tyra does it anyway. So she looks at Tatiana and says, "Oh, wow, we have Eminem doing drag." And then she looks over at Jessica Wilde. Oh, she goes, "Is that Dumbo flying in?" Because she's got big ears. Then she gets to Jujubee and squats down to get to Jujubee's level because Jujubee is the shortest queen of the group and calls her an undergrown orangutan. When she gets to Pandora, she just asks how old she is because she's the oldest queen this season. And finally, when she gets to Raven, who's wearing a tank top, shorts, and sandals, Tyra shades her outfit by asking, "Are you going swimming or doing drag?" It wasn't really funny. But, you know, she's the first one to ever go on RuPaul's Drag Race to the library. So, you got to give her a little bit of leeway there. Tatiana is second. She says she doesn't want to do this at all. But she starts with Tyra. She asks Tyra to smile. And when Tyra does, Tatiana says, "Don't smile." It's because her teeth are a bit crooked. She asks if Jessica Wilde picks up satellites, again because of her big ears. And then once again, Tatiana gave up. She said she couldn't think of anything to say, and so she quit. Third up was Jessica Wilde, who went straight to it. She asked Tyra if she thought her ears were big, then she's got another thing that's big for her and grabbed her dick. She looks at Tatiana and said, "You are so fat, girl." And that was it. But what's funny is that Tatiana isn't fat at all. She looks at Jujubee and of course she said, "What are you doing here, mama? Go back to Chinatown, girl." For Pandora, she just said, "You are a gringa, puerca." Puerca is Spanish slang for sloppy or messy. And for Raven, Jessica Wilde said, "You the top model? When I see your face, I said puñeta," which is another Spanish word that is like the F word, as in fuck, and you use it when you're angry, I guess is what it said. Fourth up is Jujubee. Straight up, she said, "I will read a bitch. I will read you to filth." She says, "Miss Tyra, was your barbecue canceled? Your grill is fucked up." Miss Tatiana, "Miss Honey, you think you're so soft? Not by the hairs of your chinny chin chin." And then she looks at Jessica Wilde and she said, "Let me tell you something, puerca. You won't understand this anyways." And then she proceeds to speak in Laotian, which I will not attempt to do. But translated, she says, "You have a dog face. Your body is huge." Then she looks over to Pandora and says, "Pandora, can we talk about sun tanning?" Because she's super pale and pasty. And when she gets to Raven, Jujubee says, "And you, legendary you think you are. Legendary? Looks like leg and dairy." Fifth up is Pandora, who had no qualms with reading the other queens. To Tyra, she says, "Miss Sanchez, if you are America's sweetheart, America needs a heart transplant." Tatiana, "All I hear when I put my ear next to yours is the ocean." Jessica Wilde, "Those clothes look like a donkey fucked a piñata and threw up." Jujubee, "With that gaping thing you call an asshole, I think I can go spelunking in there." Raven, the frosty bitch, "I think I see penguins circling that pole." And then lastly is Raven. Of course, Raven had no issues with reading any of the queens. She says to Tyra, "You got a grill that could put Black & Decker out of business." For all my international listeners who don't know what Black & Decker is, Black & Decker mostly makes power tools, I think, but I guess they make barbecue grills too. Tatiana, she says, "Everyone thinks you're pretty? I do think you're pretty. I think you have a beautiful face for radio." For Jessica Wilde, Raven said, "You want to call me a top model, mommy? Bend over and take it like a man. I'll be your top model." Jujubee, who was also wearing sandals, Raven says, "Honey, don't you know a thing about doing a manicure and a pedicure? Fix them hooves, honey." And then for Pandora, she says, "By the looks of you, you're going through the change of life, honey." Sorry, y'all. I tried my best to imitate them. So after all the queens had a chance to read, the winner is Jujubee. And in Jujubee's words, she said, "Finally, I win something." And once the library is closed, we move on to the Maxi Challenge, which is a return of the Absolute Vodka Challenge. So they introduced their new flavor, berry acai, but that sounds weird, so I'm going to call it acai berry. RuPaul says the word of the week is exceptional. Of course, being the business mogul that Ru is, Ru, who at this point had written 2 books about his exceptional life experiences. The newest book at the time in 2010 was Workin' It, RuPaul's Guide to Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Style. Ru says that writing a book is a great way to let people know who you really are. So for this week's Maxi Challenge, drawing inspiration from Ru's books, of course, the queens will have to come up with their own book concept, an autobiography that highlights the most exceptional moments in their lives to let the world know who they really are. They will also be working with 2 photographers, Idris Elba, and Tony on a cover for their book. In addition to the fully formulated autobiography concept and cover idea for their photo shoot, the queens will be doing an interview with celebrity journalist Mark Malkin, where they can show their charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. They will be judged on their ability to seamlessly work in plugs to their upcoming book, as well as the new Absolute Acai Berry flavor. The more they can plug in or work in their book and the Absolute Acai Berry during the interview, the better. 3 things I wanted to point out before we get into this week's Maxi Challenge. First, for the photo shoot, although the photographers are there to shoot the queens have to make in the moment decisions on what to do, what props to have, and everything right there on the spot. And I understand that that's part of the challenge, but in real life, you'd have a marketing team that helps with all of this. Second, during the interview with Mark Malkin portion, the queens didn't realize that he wouldn't physically be there, that he'd be interviewing them via satellite, and he can see them, but they can't see him. Which is fair because celebrities are often interviewed across the world, so this is, I guess, kind of to be expected. And then third, I want to remind everyone that I completely understand that none of this is easy, so I'll try my best to just give it to you how I see it and not judge the queens, at least not too harshly. First, Tyra. The title of her book is The Woman in Me. She says she wants to be more serious and talk about how the woman, as in her drag persona Tyra, helped her get back to loving and understanding people and allowing her to love them back. And then Tyra also admits that as a teenager, she'd made mistakes before her son was on the way. So during Tyra's cover shoot, she definitely knew what she wanted, so kudos to her. She had a series of 3 or 4 different poses that she chose. She's very confident, but then at one point during the shoot, she started to sweat profusely on her forehead, so the photographers kind of point that out. For Tyra's interview with Mark Malkin, she's answering questions okay, but she called the drink this berry drink from Absolute. So it's good that she remembered the Absolute part, but then she didn't remember the product name. Okay, second is Raven. Her book is titled Young, Broke, and Fabulous. Her favorite chapter, she says, is LTR, long-term relationship, as in the relationship with herself. Rue's advice to Raven is, who do you see buying this book? During Raven's cover shoot, she was as confident and in control as ever. She wanted her cover to look like she was at a yard sale, so she grabbed a small couch with a bunch of junk that would be at a yard sale and posed on the couch. Raven was really comfortable during the interview, although she gave her usual frosty personality. She smoothly mentioned her book and Absolute's drink. She actually mentioned her book a lot. Third up was Jessica Wilde. Her book hadn't been named at that point, but her story is going to be about a kid who always had dreams and or daydreams, and in the end, all the dreams come true. Rue suggests that a funny or cheeky title would be great, and that Rue wants people to know who Jessica Wilde is. During Jessica's cover shoot, the photographers asked her what she was thinking about because she's kind of just looking in the air like she's dreaming, and she says she's thinking about her dreams. But the photographers said it just looked like she was just kind of staring off into nothing. But eventually she got comfortable and grabbed an Oscar Award statue knockoff, and she really embodied a woman who was dreaming about being a star. During one of the questions for her interview with Mark, he's in the middle of the question, and then she suddenly interrupts him to plug the Absolute acai berry drink. And at the very end of Jessica's interview, she crams in the title of her biography, which is Jessica Wilde, Dreams of a Golden Child. Then we move on to Tatiana. Her book is called Tati, From Teen Queen to Drag Superstar. Her book is about her life prior to becoming Tatiana, how she came out in the 5th grade and started doing drag at 14. And then during Tatiana's cover shoot, she had a pit crew, or the pit crew models, with their backs to her left and to her right. And at the encouragement of the photographers, she requested that they look back at her like she's hot, like they want her, which she is. She's gorgeous. But it wasn't reading that way at all. And remember, they're not actors, the pit crew guys, they're models. So then she shooed them off and just posed by herself. During her interview, one of the questions was with Mark Malkin was if she'd ever been hit on by straight men before. And she says that she gets hit on every single time that she goes out in drag. And when they get too close, she tells them to back off and that she's a dude. And she kind of struggles to barely mention the acai drink at the very end, and she totally forgets to mention her book at all. Then we have Pandora. Her book is aptly named Out of the Box with 2 X's because her name is Pandora Box with 2 X's. She wants to talk about discovering herself through dressing up as someone else and finding inner strength and not listening to that voice that says that you're not good enough. She shares with Ru that she tried to kill herself like she did with the other queens. And Ru asks if there was a turning point, which Pandora says through discovering theater, she met people that were like her, and through that, she found drag. So drag saved my life, is what she says. Ru says that he saw Pandora as a comedy queen or the Goldie Hawn of the group, but with the details of her dramatic life before drag, it adds depth to her character. This is probably the most confident I think that Pandora has been. She decided immediately that she, just like the title of her book, she'd be coming out of a box while the pit crew models helped her out of the box. So I think she had a very clear vision of what she wanted, just like Raven did. Pandora did fine during the interview. She answered all of Mark Malkin's questions, and she also plugged her book. She just wasn't fully confident when she plugged the acai berry vodka before, or because she had trouble pronouncing acai, and so she didn't even mention Absolute. She just called it acai berry vodka. But I think she showed that she wasn't really sure, so then, it just doesn't look good when you're not confident in what you're saying. Jujubee was last. Her book is titled Memoirs of a Gay Sha, Jujubee's Journey, and I'm Still Here. That title kind of doesn't make sense to me, at least the second portion. Pun of the week goes to Jujubee, though, for Memoirs of a Geisha. Her target audience is gay Asian males. She says that when you're a gay Asian male, they don't see you as that. They see you as a woman born into the wrong body, and says that is definitely not her. She wants to talk about her childhood in her autobiography, discovery of her homosexuality, the death of her father, and then the move to America. During Jujubee's cover shoot, she came out in a Chinese-style dress, an Asian-style conical hat with a fan. I did cringe a bit to it. She struck some poses, but according to the photographers, she could have used her time a bit better as well as her props better because the fan that she brought out was mostly on the ground. Jujubee handled her interview very well. She's got a way about interjecting comedy into anything she does. And to her credit, when Mark asks her where she hides her candy, we don't really get the full context of the conversation, but you just see him asking her where she hides her candy. She says, "There's a lot of candy going on down here. It's not true what they say about Asians." And Jujubee, they didn't show her plugging the vodka at all. I guess that was a purposeful edit. Anyways, Runway, the category is, I'm calling it Book Launch Party because there wasn't an official category. The judges are Merle Ginsburg and Santino Rice, who are the regulars. Special guest judges are best-selling authors Gigi Lavangi Grazer and Jackie Collins, who's a romance novelist, as well as the Absolute Vodka's image czar, Jeffrey Moran, who was there last season. They've got a packed house for the judges this episode. I think this is the only time there's been 6 judges at once, ever. So first on the runway, Tyra. She's in a nude-colored gown with these furry brown bracelets around her wrists. Then she kind of manually transforms her look by pulling a black belt or like a black shiny belt out of her bra and wrapping it around her waist, cinching it around her waist, pulling the gown up to make it a short skirt, and then unraveling the fur bracelets off of her wrists. And I guess she made it into a purse, or maybe she just was holding the fur in her right hand, but the judges were gagging over it. Gigi Lavangi Grazer said she's glad her boyfriend wasn't there, otherwise she'd have lost him to Tyra. Merle said it was one of the best dresses they've seen all season. Jackie Collins didn't like the cover of her book, which was of Tyra in 3 different poses. She just thought it was too busy, but she did like the concept of her book. Merle also liked the concept of the book and that she revealed a little bit of vulnerability about herself, because up until then she's kind of just been known as the diva and acts really diva-ish. Ru called her out for not remembering the name of the product she was promoting, and her response was that she'd rather not F up the product name, to which Jeffrey Moran reminded her that if you're going to be paid by a corporation, you might want to remember the name of their product. Fair point. Jujubee was second on the runway. She came out with a tight baby blue sequined gown. She didn't have a transformation, but just like Tyra, she looked really, really good. Ru asked the other judges if she was the starter wife, and Gigi Lavangi replied, I think that's the finisher wife. I don't think anyone would ever leave that. Jujubee made sure to make eye contact with every single judge. Jackie Collins thought she was dynamite. She loved the title of her book as well as the concept and thinks that it could sell not only to gay readers but straight readers as well. Merle pointed out that the title is great because it reminds readers of the already famous title, Memoirs of a Geisha. Gigi Lavangi tells Jujubee that she knows some rich Hollywood moguls who'd like to take her out if she's ever interested. Juju didn't get read or called out for not mentioning absolute acai berry, which, like I mentioned earlier, they didn't show her saying it. Maybe she did, I don't know. So I'm just guessing that, they just decided to edit it out. I do want to say that I didn't like her cover at all. It wasn't even because of the cringy clothes and conical hat that she was wearing. It just didn't really lend itself to the title. Third on the runway was Tatiana. She walked onto the runway with a tight, slightly below the knee, black and white striped gown and looked hella fishy. She says she's not glammed out like the other queens, but says that she looks really good, and I have to agree. Ru says it's not a jailbreak, but a jailbait look, and I think it was Merle Ginsburg who said, they say never wear horizontal stripes unless you're Tatiana. Jackie Collins said maybe it's a good thing she forgot to mention her book because she didn't like the concept at all, and the title Tati isn't great because in England, Tati, spelled Tatty, means not good. Gigi Lavangi said she's worried about Tatiana's confidence level walking down the runway, while Santino said that her dress was a few stripes too long and is giving off a slightly Morticia Addams look, which in 2023 might be cool since Wednesday, the show on Netflix, is super popular. I don't know. Tatiana got defensive and said that she's given up on trying to figure out what's long enough and what's short enough, which is fair because she often got read for wearing skirts that were too short, and now that it's a bit longer, they say it's too long. Jeffrey Moran said that if that's how she's going to mention the product, that they might have a fight in the car on the way home from the shoot or the interview. I think it's pretty clear she's going to be in the bottom since she's being read super hard, but we will see. Fourth on the runway was Pandora. She strutted down the runway with a light green cheetah print gown where the top right side was all black, and she said she was going for a glamorous and fun look. I do have to say I didn't love this outfit, and I'm so embarrassed to say this, but I never knew the difference between cheetah print and leopard print. Does anybody listening know the difference? Because the difference is that cheetah print is uniformed black spots, while leopard print are black spots with a brown center. Boom, dropping feline knowledge for y'all. One of the judges said about Pandora, if Courtney Love looked like a woman. Ru said she's been consistent but can't seem to take it to the next level. And at this point, I think it's expected, but Santino hated her dress. He said that it's not glamorous to him, to which she said that it's funny glamour, to which he responded with, if you're going to look like a coke whore, take the joke even further. I was pretty shocked by that. That's pretty damn brutal. I mean, I didn't like the dress, but I didn't think she looked like a coke whore. Then Jeffrey Moran said that Pandora failed to mention absolute in the plug at all, and that was tough for him. When Ru asks what she has to say for herself, Pandora was really clever. She thinks for a split second and says, she brings up her book and says, I just want to say that my book, Out of the Box, How Drag Saved My Life, is now available online and in stores, to which the judges gagged over it and laughed their asses off. That's one of the best responses or comebacks to criticism I've heard on RuPaul's Drag Race so far. Well played, Pandora. And then I got to say that I love Pandora's title and book cover the most. It's fun, it's on brand, yet it connects to her story about how coming out as a gay man saved her life. It stood out the most to me. Fifth up was Jessica Wilde. She walked the runway in a short, glittery gown. Maybe it was golden brown, or I guess that would be bronze. I couldn't tell. Jackie Collins said she looks like a hero from one of her books. Santino said her book cover looked like a book that a 9-year-old would buy, and it could have been more sophisticated. He also said her interview got into train wreck territory. I'd have to agree. I think part of it was her struggling with her English, but it kind of came off like she was drunk from drinking the Absolute Acai Berry drink. Ru said the title Dreams of a Golden Child, because of her accent, it sounded like she said Dreams of a Golden Shower. Jackie Collins liked the cover, but thought holding the Oscar was a bit pretentious, while Gigi didn't like the cover and thought the interview was so bad that she wouldn't change a thing. Although Jessica plugged the drink a lot, Jeffrey Moran said it was a bit too sloppy and that he would have fired her in the car on the way home from the interview. Raven was last. She looked super sexy as usual on the runway. She had on this super tight bronze, or again, maybe golden brown, I don't know, brown chicka brown gown? Bad joke, I'm sorry. She had curly hair this time. I didn't love it on her, the curly hair, but that's just me. I think she looks better with straight hair. Ru said, "A star is born again." Jackie Collins said she looks like she was a politician's lover on the side, while Ru said, "Disco scandalous." In her interview, Raven was able to work in the title of her book, Young, Broke, and Fabulous, a bunch. So she got props from Jackie Collins for doing it really well. Gigi Lavangi said that Raven is so sultry and thought Raven could teach her how to be more of a woman. Jeffrey Moran said that she may have oversold the Absolute Acai Berry drink too much and that she needs to practice some restraint. Spoiler alert, if you have not watched the episode and don't want to know who wins and who goes home, I suggest you stop here. Ru reminds the queens that he knows what it took for each of the queens to get to where they are and that no matter what happens tonight, they're all champions. The safe queens are Tyra. Ru said the next drag superstar needs to be consistently dynamic. Also safe was Jujubee. Ru said she had them at geisha. And last was Pandora Box. Ru said the judges were not absolutely impressed, but she was safe anyway. And the winner of the week was Raven, who Ru said was young, broke, and fabulous, which means the two bottom queens are Tatiana, who Ru said is young and talented, but she fumbled her interview and came to the main stage dressed as a referee, and Jessica Wilde. Ru said she went wild in her interview, but her cover didn't snatch any trophies from the judges. They lip-synced to He's the Greatest Dancer by Sister Sledge, which upon hearing, I realized that Will Smith sampled it for his song Getting Jiggy With It. Man, I'm old. Jessica brought a lot of energy and had disco vibes to the song, or to her dance and her performance. Whatever you think of when you think disco dancing, she did it. While Tatiana brought, in the words of Jujubee, a sensual, sexy vibe. And man, was she sexy. But Shantae, Tatiana stays, and Jessica Wilde sashayed away. Tatiana was in shock. I don't know why. Maybe that goes to the confidence that Gigi Lavangi was talking about. And some of the queens in the back were shocked. Raven was not happy. Throughout the episode, they kept showing Raven and Tatiana talking trash about each other and taking digs at each other. So there's definitely beef and drama there. I think Tatiana deserved the win, even though it could have gone either way. But I think Jessica's downfall was that she focused more on the disco dancing and stopped lip syncing at some points of the song. These are the things that stood out to me. When the queens were sharing their stories from high school, the stories are so sad. I can't help but to think back to when I was in high school. Luckily, I was never involved in bullying anyone, but that doesn't necessarily make me guilt-free. Because like Mystique, who sashayed away earlier, she was a big girl and she said that she knows or instinctually feels when people are talking about her. So I'm sure the kids who were gay during my high school years felt that from people too. I casually called my friends the F word to emasculate them. And for that, I want to wholeheartedly apologize. It was stupid and there are no excuses for it. Obviously, their stories are all touching to hear, but what also stood out to me was the fact that homophobia crosses cultural lines. Jessica is Puerto Rican, Jujubee is Laotian American, Tyra is African American, and Pandora is Caucasian American. And when you put things into context, This fight or struggle to end homophobia and hatred feels so daunting, but it doesn't mean we stop trying. Every little bit counts. Every little bit goes a long way, as we've heard from these queens and their experiences. And of course, the biggest thing that stood out to me during their conversation was the fact that Pandora tried to kill herself. How many other people are also going through something like this? Now, she says the adversity she's gone through has made her stronger and happier, and that's amazing. And I'm sure her story has touched so many people and saved so many lives. But I can't help but think of the people who weren't strong enough, who didn't have the support or the will to live. You read or hear about stories nowadays where kids, ages 12, 13, 14, maybe even younger, who are killing themselves from being bullied. And not just from other kids anymore. Now it's coming from state governments, disguised as bills or laws or some other bullshit to protect children. If we see something, if we hear people bullying someone or making fun of a marginalized group, we have to say something. And we also have to say something with our vote. So make sure your vote counts. I know it's not till 2024, but you got to start thinking about those things now. I just wanted to point out that although it's easy to coach couch from home, I can understand why Tatiana gave up in the rocker challenge last week and then again in the library challenge this week. It's not easy. Coming up with kind of friendly disses or shade about people isn't easy. Improv is hard. When you see stand-up comedians or people performing improv, it's freaking hard as hell. It's a very specific skill, and these folks put a lot of hard work into their craft. On RuPaul's Drag Race, it's a balance, and I understand that. But at the same time, you're in a competition. And if you're not here to win and you just give up, then why are you here? Another thing that stood out to me was Tyra making mistakes as a teenager. I just wanted to say that we all make mistakes. Hopefully, teenagers are surrounded by people who care enough to encourage them to be better people. I've been seeing in the news lately about teens ransacking malls, department stores, stealing in big groups, getting into big, massive brawls. I don't know, maybe it's a microcosm. I don't even know if I'm using that correctly. Maybe it's not happening all over the place, but kind of like I just said, if we can lend a helping hand or a kind word, if we can reach out and change someone's life in a positive way, I don't know, maybe that can help them change or want to be better. It's wishful thinking perhaps, but what else can we do? Another thing that stood out to me was Raven's favorite chapter on her long-term relationship with herself, because I really think that is what this podcast, Straight Guy Queer Eye, is about. The relentless pursuit of perfection, to steal Lexus's old tagline, to constantly self-reflect, not until some set amount of time, but forever. We're constantly working on ourselves, seeing the world through another person's perspective. In this case, trying to see the world through the queer eye to gain a new perspective into our world, to improve ourselves a little bit every day. This is not to say that this will make us perfect, because perfection doesn't exist, at least not to me. All you can do is learn, make mistakes, fail, and pick yourself up and try to improve on that. I'm doing that constantly. I'm constantly going through my Yenaissance. Pun of the week goes to me. I'm just kidding. But really, though, I had to go through a long-term relationship with myself to get where I am at today. And I've got a long way to go. And I recognize that this relationship with myself will never stop. Pandora discovering theater. Because I also discovered theater, which led me on that Yenaissance, which was a whirlwind journey to where I am today. This is a blatantly obvious correlation. That's how I connect to someone like Pandora. And if you can ask yourself how you connect with these queens, you can see the humanity in them. You know, you may not be gay, but maybe you and your dad or your mom didn't get along for some reason. Maybe you were bullied. Maybe you never felt like you belonged. Maybe you were ashamed of something you did. Gay people are just that. People. They've got problems just like you and me. They're not any different. If we can understand that, then we can begin to become better human beings. Another thing that stood out to me, and even though I already knew this, it's a real reality check to realize, like that, realize. I'm proud of myself sometimes, even if I'm super corny. Anyway, it's a real reality check to realize that on top of everything these queens have to do during the week, they now also have to be marketing or branding gurus for their own brand. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of celebrities have full teams of people to do this for them. But at the same time, these queens aren't at RuPaul's level yet, so they can't expect that. So I respect that there's a real grassroots level to these challenges too, because hopefully this teaches the queens about themselves, their brand, and in the future, even with a team, to have the ability to know who they really are, as opposed to having a team decide everything for them and potentially coming off as inauthentic. There's something to learn from this. It's not just for drag queens or actors. In your work, what makes you stand out? How are you different? How has your story made you who you are? These are powerful things to know in your life for whatever it is that you want to do. You can learn a lot from what these queens go through if you let yourself learn from them. Lastly, I cringed at what Jujubee wore because as an Asian man, I've dealt with my fair share of racism towards Asians and dealing with goofy Asian stereotypes and tropes all my life. I get that Jujubee's name is based on the jujube fruit known as the Chinese date, but I personally think playing into these stereotypes limits us, at least if you do it overtly. Now, I get that this was 13 years ago and Asians hadn't come into their own fully in Hollywood or in the entertainment world yet. Still haven't, to be honest. We're slowly getting there. And I get that Jujubee, is just going with what she knows or what she wants to portray. And Jujubee is still one of my favorites because she definitely redeemed herself when she made the remark about the candy and the stereotype about Asians not being true. It's a struggle because I also understand that she could be making the choice to, or purposely making the choice to reappropriate the negative view of Asians to make it sexy. I don't know. It's a complicated thing. And unfortunately, I'm not articulate enough to convey my thoughts on this. But what comes to mind is seeing, Asian restaurants or stores still using that old slash style English print that's supposed to be Asian. It's just old and outdated. Or you can compare it to hearing someone calling an Asian person Oriental. I think Asian Americans have contributed and more than shown that we are also etched into the fabric of American culture, and we can move beyond these outdated stereotypical images. And we have more to show than these stereotypical images that people have of us. Jujubee, I love you. That's it for this week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you've been enjoying Straight Guy Queer Eye, or if you're completely new to the podcast, please consider subscribing. Share it with 5 people you know. Give it a rating on your podcast app. You can follow Straight Guy Queer Eye on Instagram at SGQE Podcast. You can follow me on my personal Instagram at Hello Paul Yen. I'd love to hear from you, so please send comments, suggestions, and feedback to sgqepodcast@gmail.com. And remember, be human, be kind.